Click the links to our channel over at SubScribestar or here on YouTube. So I'm thinking about movies and Marvel, Disney going in the right direction with movies. And I watched this movie. I thought, oh, this is kind of a good movie. And then I corrected myself. Go, no, it's moving. This and Deadpool 3 were moving in the right direction. They're still not good movies. And then I thought, well, would I go see it in the theater? Because I went sailing to see the movies and I actually found a pretty decent copy. And what would it be worth? And there was no, I wouldn't go see it in the theater because it's not worth what they're charging for tickets. The movies are just going in the right direction. They're a massive improvement. The past two, Deadpool and Wolverine movie and this improvement over what was before. Like this is kind of a follow up on Black Widow with Scarlett Johansson. That movie was really stupid, and this is several grades better than that, which just means it's moving in the right direction. And then can Marvel Disney capitalize on those two movies? No, I don't think they can. And if you watch the movies, you'll understand why they can't. Is this kind of like a one-off movie, as good as it was? So to fairly call something a dead brand means it's dead. It can't turn around, or the people in charge don't want to turn it around, which amounts to something similar, but it's not actually the same thing in terms of an outsider valuing the company for the point of a takeover. So is Marvel dead? Then the bigger picture is, well, what about Disney films in general? And then that's a big part of Disney itself, which has a lot of old IP money coming in. They've got two huge parks, California and Florida, and then they have merchandise, and that's another huge part. Though probably it's less important now than it used to be when every kid was wearing a Mickey Mouse t-shirt. Oh, they also got cruise ships that I think they vacation off of Epstein Island for some reason. And the issue of, well, is Marvel dead? Well, then for how long? Because comic book characters famously come and go, and then they come back again when they need to. So could Disney take a break from Marvel for like 5 years and then start this all over again? Or maybe it wouldn't even need to be 5 years to let people forget a little bit. And probably they could not take a break. And it's a kind of bit complicated because the movies are not in a vacuum, or the audience is not some, I don't know, what do you call it, like blank slate theory. What's the tabula rasa? No, what's it called? Anyway, some of the name recognition is coming from a specific demographic, and Kevin Smith's movies actually are really good examples of Generation X. They sort of explain what Gen X grew up with, the social influences with the stupid but fun 80s movies. Then we also grew up with the paper comics, then the 70s movies, even if they were on TV after they came out in the theaters. Gen X grew up at least knowing about Mickey Mouse from cartoons. Some on actual reel-to-reel recordings. We had that when we were kids, even before VHS came out. Kids and adults would commonly be wearing Disney shirts, watches. I had a Mickey Mouse watch, or and I was as an adult, or have a pillowcase or Fantasia posters. So the kids in the 70s were saturated with Disney brand recognition and goodwill, where Disney was firmly a family-friendly company. And the best audience is a kid's audience that grows up to get their kids introduced to the product. And then you have a never-ending buyer-seller relationship. But Disney, in their infinite wisdom, decided to switch to becoming an adult brand, which is probably going to turn out to be fatal for them. But because they're such a large company, they have such momentum and that old IP money and merchandise money coming in that it might take 20 more years to see the final effects of, because Disney was a big network entertainment company. Yes, it was mostly serving up garbage, to be fair. Your childhood memories are, you have to go look at those movies fairly. But it was family focused, so at least it was benign derivative storytelling. Now, I mean, that's a whole other issue, is like the Americanization of telling these European-based mythology stories where it's a derivative of derivative, especially with comic books, where you look at it and go, oh, wouldn't it just be better to tell the actual Greek mythology or Norse mythology stories instead of telling these derivative stories? And they go, well, no, because then we can't copyright that or trademark that. We can't have legal rights associated with that. That's why we have to create these characters that are very similar to it so we can profit, but then they also ultimately destroy everything, and they move kids away from learning real history to learn this kind of garbage. And as I become an adult, I understand what adults in our generation were talking about with garbage TV and comic books, and it's like, yeah, unfortunately they were right. Comics were fun, but they are. I think Vox Day has done a couple like set in Rome comics. Anyway, that Disney is gone, and they don't have a kids audience anymore. And the Rachel Leishman types who are obsessed with oh so random Disney schlock, well, they're 30-year-old wine drinking single chubby women who are not having kids. So that's pretty much the worst audience you can have. Unless, of course, you have a goal that isn't apparent at first, like your lizard people who destroy nations. Disney was able to market to people across age groups for their entire lives. So Disney decided to destroy all of that. Putting the failing movies away for 5 years is going to be hard because the original audience will have aged out of movies by then, and Disney has burned its goodwill with that audience within a certain age bracket who would be in the position to watch the movies themselves or take our grandkids with us to the theater. But that generation, X-ish audience, maybe older millennials, is done with Disney because, a lot of people are realizing they're looking at these big corporate demonic entities, and they seem like they're just this degenerate Moloch worshipping perverts. Most people don't want to watch Disney or their big sodomy agenda, which they're well open about. The direction Disney went in, there's no demand for that direction. They vastly overestimated the amount of interest in LGBTQV, all that kind of nonsense. There's like it seems like a fad because it is. So Disney would have to get a new younger audience for superhero characters that they haven't heard of from primary sources. So that's kind of it's just like flashy images on the screen and made for Chinese type of movies. When Spider-Man first came out, the majority, and I think, that was like Fox at the time, but whatever. The majority of the male audience had read and the thing is, whether this is Disney or DC or some other company that might own some, it's all the same. There has to be interest in this genre for the rising tide to raise all boats. The majority of the male audience had read the comics decades ago, and that's not. And it was decades since they started this reintroducing superheroes. That's not true anymore because the comics are gay, rainbow, sodomy, AIDS, and monkeypox, and girls don't read comics. They just go to the movies because their boyfriends drag them. So these kind of movies are connected to the physical comic books, which don't have that saturation anymore. And to the generation of people in their maybe now 40s to 60s who care vaguely about the stories or have name recognition, that audience isn't being replaced with younger people. So the Disney properties are going to have to change to sell to the new, young, mostly Latin American audience who so far have not been reading comics or watching the movies. And then ultimately the movies are going to have to be made in with Spanish-speaking actors organically or natively. First make them in Spanish and then dub them into English for the English-speaking minority audience. And was it Blue Beetle? Some like Mexican story about Trump and being deported. Like nobody cared. The audience that it was marketed for, Mexicans, didn't turn up to go watch that movie. It seems like Disney has done everything wrong if they're looking for long-term success. I'm sure eventually shareholders will awaken. Disney is kind of a company for an America that doesn't exist anymore. And that's one of the reasons the Indiana Jones Part 5 failed. Because the references to that war 80 years ago doesn't make sense for the new demographic of America who just doesn't care about American wars and history because they're not of the nation of America. So anyway, this new movie is kind of in a weird spot because it's getting good reviews from soy boy professional critics and from the audience that's watching it. But the weird thing is it's not translated into actual sales, which surprised me because on social media, there's a fair amount of people on Twitter who like it, and they are willing to admit that Marvel has not done well lately. So it feels like those are sincere reviews. And then I went and saw it myself. So this might turn out to be, it has, for me at least, a decent, fun movie, but it just is not going to get the numbers that it probably deserves. And you see that a lot of times because the perception of woke is destroying movies now because people on a hair trigger. The last movie that did well was Deadpool Part 3, and then you have the massive bombs of diversity hire Captain America, which nobody wanted. The character is called the Falcon, and then they made him the Falcon and Captain America because Black Girl Magic. Then you had diversity hire Madam Web and the Marvels, and the boring Black Widow, Shang-Chi, the diverse fat and elderly Eternals, huge bomb. Ant-Man Part 3, and there's a lecture in the beginning of Ant-Man 3 where the girl's talking to San Francisco, I don't know, police station, and she's lecturing about like some kind of Antifa lecture, and you think, you're in California, which is a communist paradise. It's been run by left wing for a long time, and its homeless tent cities have been growing. And as it goes further left, the state objectively gets worse. So how come California is not Wakanda? You have everything you want, and it's turned into an absolute asshole. And then there's probably a lot of other Disney bombs outside the Marvel universe, and DC hasn't been doing any better. So the whole genre is getting a bad reputation. People look at this and go, "Oh, it just feels stupid now." The perception is Disney is firmly committed to making woke, gay, diverse, vagina, heavy-handed, preachy movies, and Hollywood in general is on board that, which is an accurate perception, which is a huge problem because the audience is done with this kind of BLM-inspired Black Power movies. BLM and the left are violent, Soros-funded domestic terrorists. Getting a lecture from these cocaine-addicted Epstein Island gangs at Disney is not what the audience is interested in. Oh, hey, look, how dumb blonde-haired, blue-eyed people are. Gosh, another movie. It must be like 40 in a row. Oh, what's this? A bad guy in Avatar? Was that Avatar? With the blonde hair and blue eyes? Wow, the priest is a Satanist, and under the church, i.e. Jerusalem's Lot by Stephen King style, is a secret tunnel to the underworld. Wow, that sounds so creative that I've seen it a dozen times. Another German, Russian, South African evil blonde man. One would think with tunnels being in the news that they would pick that other belief system, but oddly enough, they never do. So they not only fly now, but they rape as well, because that's family-friendly Disney. Rape and assassinating your nephew, if you remember Star Wars. Anyway, so once the buzz of a genre is gone, you can't get it back because the audience gets older, and the movies are just from a different phase of their life. So now, watching Thunderbolts, it's all schlubby, pudgy bundles of sticks in spandex and girl power, except that the leading ladies are, well, pretty, don't get me wrong, they're putting off kind of like feminist mom vibes, not sexy piece of ass vibes, like the, what's the name of that vagina candle lady? I want to say Gwen Stefani, but that's a singer. That was in the original Iron Man with she was like the secretary to Iron Man. I don't remember her name, but she has like fucking vagina candles. It's so, I mean, you want to talk about living in a Hollywood echo chamber where you come up with an idea like that and nobody tells you, no, you probably don't want to do that. Just call them like, I don't know, floral scented or citrus scented or something like that. Probably, stay away from biology. I mean, it's cute, funny, and sexy in your own little, room of a dozen people, but the rest of the world, I think it's just like you're blowing smoke up your butt with that kind of like just jerking off everyone in the room with that kind of stupidity, and nobody looks at her and goes, "That's not a good idea. Probably not wanna." Anyway, they need to go in the opposite direction. Get back to Scarlett Johansson with her milkers out. Now they have the women in this movie, at least, wearing essentially burqas, like SWAT uniforms, but they're very bulky. Everything is just stupid, and it feels over. Marvel used to be stupid, admittedly, but fun, and they managed to screw it up. And now it feels like people just lost their heart on, and they just want to go to sleep and just be done with this, at least for the night. The movies now are fluffy nothing, and it reminds you that the movies were always stupid, but the country was sort of in a different place when the first Iron Man came out in 2008. And then you had Trump's derangement syndrome in 2016, and that was cringe enough. And the Hollywood response to it was cringe, I mean. But then the mask off black communist domestic terrorism, which, how do I say this? How far are we into the 14 minutes, holy cow. I lost probably most of the audience by now, I think I can be honest. Most made people look at, some of their fellow Americans and decide that, Perhaps it'd be time to go our own ways. I don't. I guess I can't really be honest on YouTube, but the fatigue is real. People are really experiencing it. Someone would even say it goes so far as to enter into exhaustion territory. Movies, I mean, it's like $650,000 worth of exhaustion. I'll say it for free. Movies are not in a vacuum, and the audience relationship is complicated and networked, so it seems like this is a solid movie that might have to have some word of mouth before it catches on. Probably next weekend, it'll, I assume, do a whole lot better. And maybe it will, but it's got a lot of girl power, and it's got women talking and not looking sexy. And people are into women looking sexy and not talking so much in movies. I'm not, like, don't put words into my mouth. I'm talking about movies, fictional movies that are for a male audience, not the real world. Of course, you want to hear your significant other talk about things. It's kind of comforting to hear them. But in a movie, you just want them to look pretty, like Scarlett Johansson in the original movies, because women are kind of boring in movies. And I know I don't. There's like two women who listen to this, and I dearly love them because they're pretty serious donators on SubScribestar, and they send me cool pocket knives and comic books. Thanks, LG. And people want women in feminine roles, but not as congresswomen talking to some other diversity hire. As awesome as Julia Dreyfus did, she did an amazing role. And so did the director, I think Schreier or something. It's just kind of tiresome when there's so much, women talking. We love women IRL, but it's rare to actually want to listen to them talk, especially when they're kind of in these roles that the men should be in. Where everything is political, then the thing is, everything has symbolism, and movies are going to be interpreted as left or right, especially nowadays where we have a hair trigger, and where before Trump derangement syndrome, the left-wing bias was not as annoying. And I can freely admit that, yes, I have a hair trigger now, to the point where I see these diversity hires, and I kind of hope she gets gored to death by an elephant in the first scene. I mean, that's kind of the movie I would make. Go against the current zeitgeist, maybe even make a movie about evil people using tunnels into the satanic realms, and all the diversity hires die in humorous ways, like Spinal Tap drummers. Half of this movie is a female senator. See, before I knew who she was, I thought, oh, she looks vaguely familiar. And I thought she looks vaguely ethnic, maybe Italian. And then there's some kind of chubby brown sidekick. And the thing is, the last thing I want to see is a fat brown affirmative action hire. And after all that, the movie is okay. But what I'm thinking of in a few years is we can use AI and CGI to race swap everyone into beautiful Swedish people. Then everyone can have custom movies. We can get rid of the gay background scenes that they get rid of for China and the Middle East anyway, and race swap out all the diversity, except to make the antagonist non-whites because, verisimilitude, so everyone is happy. We can have custom rips and edits where if you want a bigger Melker version here and the smaller butts over there, or whatever, you're into really thin chicks, you don't have to have any diversity hires, unless, of course, they're criminals or something. And that's probably like less than 3 years away. So anyway, one last thing is the lead character, who, if you watch the first 20 minutes of the movie, is this kind of red-haired blonde strawberry character. He's like the grade B Captain America, and he's good, but he's such an obnoxious douchebag. And of course, he's in a race mix relationship, and a douchebag in the relationship as well, because he wants to throw away his ultra rare genetics. There's a lot of great opportunities for humor in with him and his character, where he could have lightened up. He could have had some self-awareness, but they skipped it to make him as much of a jerk as possible, because of course he's reddish hair is the top rarity of rarity. And my point is, if you want to go sail the high seas tonight, just watch the first 20 minutes, and because he's in it being a jerk. And now imagine any other race of actor being such an extreme a-hole. Swap in a black, Asian, Latin, whatever, it would never happen. It's only red or blonde hair. And there's a longer explanation for that, of course, but not for YouTube. That's SubScribeStar type of stuff. So it is a good movie, but I don't see how the director could repeat this, and maybe he doesn't have to repeat it. It's just one good atmospheric thriller, at least in my opinion, and it's a movement in the right direction. And credit to the director and to Julia Dreyfus. She was a perfect actor for the role because she plays a scummy politician really well, and she's kind of made to look like who's that Hawaiian representative with she has like a blonde streak in her hair or a gray streak in her hair. Though I don't know why I mean, she's not a scummy, like, I don't know why they kind of made her look like that. But Dreyfus takes it, for Marvel, I was going to say she almost takes it too far. No, she does take it too far into hammy territory, but for Marvel, she doesn't take it as far as Marvel typically would take it. So it was actually very well balanced. She almost, for Marvel, this was a different type of Marvel movie. And it's, like I said, it's not great. It's just good. It's just moving in the right direction. And there were a few scenes for the cinematography angle where the director or the lead camera guy, I don't know who sets up some of these scenes, where they nailed a couple of good scenes. And you don't often see that in movies where there's some really good cinematographer. What do they call the lead camera guy? Who's setting up these scenes where the symbolism, they're in this tunnel, and the symbolism of the four characters getting out of the tunnel is excellent. And there's a light slit in a dark tunnel, and they're all babbling nonsense. It has some otherworldly birth canal vibe, and that's in the first 20 minutes of the movie. So they did a lot right in this movie by setting this strange feeling of being in another dimension and the birth canal and rebirth. They did a lot right with this movie. The director did a lot right, and the lead camera guy did a lot right. Anyway, I liked it, and I know a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was good. Good movement in the right direction. Will Marvel follow up on this and Deadpool? No, probably not. It's going to be a case of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Anyway, I got to go do some gardening, and I will see you guys all next episode.